Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between Russia and Ukraine. We have now entered day 167 of the ongoing conflict. And what I wanted to jump right into today is the report that a AGM 88 HARM high-speed anti-radiation missile was recovered by Russian forces in the Russian area of operations. And now the Pentagon is saying, yes, indeed, wink, wink, nod, nod, a AGM 88 high-speed anti-radiation missile was delivered to the Ukrainians. So, first, my question is how are the Ukrainians using these AGM 88s, or using these HARM missiles on the current battlefield? Well, normally, and based on the knowledge that I have, and I am no expert on SEAD operations, suppression of enemy air defenses, but normally these systems are launched from aircraft. Now, is it possible that the Ukrainians could have launched them from a MiG-29 or Su-27? Highly doubtful. I'm not aware that the HARM has been retrofitted for the use on current Ukrainian aircraft, and I don't know. I'm not aware of any systems in terms of ground systems that make it feasible for the HARM to be used in the manner it has been used in this conflict. And you have to wonder: is it possible that maybe a U.S. F-35 carrying a HARM missile externally may have been in operation over Ukraine? I know we've had visits by various heads of state, and obviously those visitors who have entered Ukraine would need security. And is it possible that the United States may have taken some sort of military action against targets, against Russian targets, in the ongoing conflict? Is it possible that it was a Central Intelligence Agency operated F-35? Obviously, no one is aware that the CIA operates F-35s, and that would never be publicly disclosed. But that would give the U.S. plausible deniability if it had decided to use HARM missiles against Russian forces in the ongoing conflict. So again, very, very strange incident in terms of the recovery of the HARM, the high-speed anti-radiation missile, and how it is being utilized. It is possible that the Ukrainians, in conjunction with its NATO allies, have figured out a way and are using it in a ground launch capacity. We've seen the Brimstone, which is normally a air-to-ground munition, be used in the conflict. So is it possible that a HARM was used in a ground-to-ground type of capacity? I would say yes, it's possible, but the traditional use of these systems has always been to launch them from like a wild weasel or some sort of a growler or F-18 Super Hornet that's designed to suppress enemy air defense systems. So very, very interesting tidbit of information, and we'll keep an eye on that. This may be something that we find out many years into the future, pending the Earth survives this ongoing conflict, and what's rising up with China as well. But it will be interesting to eventually find out the why behind this system being used, and really the how as well. In other news, we continue to hear about a very large buildup of Russian forces on the western bank of the Dnieper River in the western bank footprint, as I like to call it. And we could see some sort of operation. Some are speculating that the offensive will be towards Mykolaiv. Others believe that the offensive will be towards Kryvyi Rih. Again, I don't believe that this will be an offensive to seize control of either of those cities. It would make sense in terms of pushing Ukrainian forces back out of range to hit the bridges over the Dnieper River. The Russians would need to push Ukrainian forces about 60 miles back in order to achieve a relative safety of the bridges that cross the Dnieper River. The HIMARS that the Ukrainians are currently using have the ability to precisely hit these bridges across the Dnieper River very, very precisely with those systems, and they have a range of 60 miles, pending the Ukrainians aren't given, are not handed over the ATACMS, and then that would press the area of attack for the HIMARS and the ATACMS out to well past 100 miles. So we'll keep an eye on that. But again, I just don't see the size and strength of the Russian forces that would be need to press forward and seize control of Mykolaiv. Remember, the Russians attempted that earlier in the campaign and were driven back from Mykolaiv. They had in fact seized control of the airport outside of Mykolaiv and were in fact circumventing the city. And the current Russian force capacity right now just does not appear to be one that could continue to drive forward and seize control of Mykolaiv, and obviously the vicious urban combat, because Mykolaiv is a fairly large city on the western bank of the Dnieper River. And the other option for Russian forces would be a move towards Kryvyi Rih, and that doesn't make a lot of sense either. I envision that the Russians, if they launch such an operation, would create a untenable salient towards Kryvyi Rih, and the Ukrainians would then have the ability to attack both the left and right flanks, the west and eastern flanks of this salient. Again, it's just not enough forces in which the Russians could bring to bear for a successful operation, really, right now, of both Kryvyi Rih and Mykolaiv. But at the same time, it does provide those 25,000 additional troops, does provide the Russians with the ability to continue to hold the western bank of the Dnieper River without a risk of a major Ukrainian counterattack to push the Russians out of that area. So initially, before the Russian buildup, there were about 10,000 plus Russian forces on the western bank. They're now 25,000. So they've augmented their forces by about 10,000 personnel in this area of operation along the southwestern area of the conflict zone. It just seems more logical, at least to me, that the Russians would make a move towards Zaporizhia and press up along the eastern bank of the Dnieper River. And I've talked about this several times, but again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens and what comes of it. The Ukrainians are also reporting over the last 24 hours that they have killed 300 Russian forces and destroyed a number of tanks and armored fighting vehicles, and continued fighting, specifically the very heavy fighting that is taking place in and around Bakhmut. Now, that is very, very difficult to confirm. We also are continuing to hear about the uptick in Russian airstrikes that are taking place both in the eastern area of operations and the southwest area operations towards Kherson as well. It would seem the Russian airstrikes are starting to become more proficient and more lethal against Ukrainian forces. And right now, the casualty figures, at least for Ukrainian forces, are pretty much a state secret. No one is talking, even the Pentagon in the United States, which is aware of the casualty figures, are not talking about the Ukrainian casualties that have been taken. We're hearing here at MFAN that the casualties that the Ukrainians have taken are mind-numbing. And a lot of this has been caused by, one, obviously, lots of heavy artillery that's being used in multiple launch rocket systems, but also the cruise missile attacks, ballistic missile attacks, and other long-range systems that the Russians are using against rear area targets, training areas, troop depots, supply depots, troop housing areas that are being targeted in these deep strikes by Russian forces. So again, the question is, how long can the Ukrainians continue to wither and withstand the sort of continued airstrikes and long-range cruise missile strikes and ballistic missile strikes that the Russians continue to rain down on Ukrainian forces? And yes, I'm going to say it again, the S-300 system, which is now becoming a fairly effective ground attack system in this ongoing conflict. Our understanding is that indeed the S-300 has proven itself to be a rather effective ground attack system and is continuing to be used in that manner as the conflict continues. Again, a supersonic, it basically becomes a supersonic ground attack weapon with a fairly sizable warhead, 200 to 300 pound warhead, with a lot of kinetic energy as it comes down on the target area, and obviously can be used in cluster attacks of 4 as well, saturating a target area. So we'll continue to monitor that deployment, that repurposing of weapon systems. That always makes for an interesting topic of how weapon systems are repurposed and used outside of their initial intent. But that pretty much does it. We'll continue to watch the issue with the AGM-88, the HARM, the high-speed anti-radiation missile. That is very, very interesting, and obviously we'll continue to report and give our thoughts around the possible use of U.S. aircraft in this ongoing conflict. Again, that is pure speculation, but it does raise questions, especially with that HARM missile, remnants of the HARM missile that was picked up by Russian forces. But we'll continue to monitor, report, and bring you content for your consumption. Thanks for joining us today, and always have a good day.